This was a water skirmish even more remarkable than Captain Sarah's. Plane packed with passengers was maneuvering through raging wind and rain when suddenly the engine and camera failed completely losing power. Plane instantly transformed into a giant glider, constantly trembling and half learning about the hurricane. Even more devastating, all of the plane's electrical systems failed. Cockpit was plunged into complete darkness. The crew had no way of finding the airport and even lost contact with air traffic control. Series of fatal failures was a devastating setback for pilots, yet it was truly incredible. Under such challenging conditions, the captain managed to save the plane from certain death. Oh, what exactly happened on that plane that day? Let's return to the scene of the crisis and review the details of the accident. The 16th of January 2002, Indonesian Airways Flight 421 was cruising at an altitude of 8,000 meters, departing from Matanan International Airport. The flight was very short, reaching its destination in just 1 hour. On board that day were 54 passengers and 6 crew members. The pilots on this flight were very experienced. Captain Rozak had been a pilot for over 20 years and had accumulated over 14,000 flight hours. Co-pilot Wasono was equally experienced, with 8,000 hours of experience. The aircraft for this direct flight was a Boeing 7373QA. Halfway through the flight, they were expected to land in half an hour, barring any unforeseen circumstances. Suddenly, the captain noticed the thunderstorm ahead on radar. The co-pilot adjusted the heading 300 degrees to the right, attempting to avoid the severe weather. However, just 2 minutes later, radar revealed an even larger thunderstorm. The captain determined the situation was minor and that the plane only needed to turn slightly to the left. It could squeeze through the gap next to the green line. It seemed the weather there was very light. However, no one expected that they would actually try to jump out of the pit they were waiting for. The captain then made an announcement, warning passengers that they might encounter some problems and asking everyone to fasten their seatbelts as a precaution. However, as the plane flew into the cloud, the weather conditions suddenly changed. Not only was thunder and lightning a problem, but an ice storm also hit the plane violently. The sudden situation left the captain completely stunned. Even more terrifying, the radar suddenly turned from green to red. The captain instantly realized that they had flown into the most dangerous superstorm. However, the plane had already entered the storm and could not turn back. The captain could only grit his teeth and navigate inside and then find a way to escape. However, the intensity of the turbulence was completely beyond everyone's expectations. The entire plane was violently shaken, even shaking the air. Seen outside the window was like the end of the world, with lightning and thunder flashing. The passengers who were trying to make a mistake screamed in fear. The captain was finding it increasingly difficult to control the aircraft. Furthermore, during the flight, he was shocked to discover that the power of both engines was rapidly decreasing. So, he joined forces with a blind man and stepped on the accelerator. Hiding animals would have naturally increased the engine speed, but strangely, there was no reaction at all. Before they could figure out the cause of the problem, all sorts of troubles began to pile up. Both engines completely shut down. The aircraft's electrical system was randomly disconnected, plunging the passenger compartment into darkness. Such an emergency, a dead phone would be even more terrifying. Every afternoon outing would be met with a magnetic external battery like this, a fixed, lightweight, and compact extended duty device. As the plane continued to drop in altitude, the captain immediately instructed the first officer to perform the emergency checklist. However, the first officer attempted to restart the aircraft twice, both times failing. The entire aircraft transformed into a giant glider, plummeting toward the ground at a speed of 1,200 meters per minute. Less than 5 minutes until impact, the captain suddenly remembered they had the APU, Auxiliary Power Unit, to power the aircraft and restart it. However, just as the first officer pressed the APU switch, something even more terrifying happened. The pilot's avionics system suddenly disconnected, and even all the instruments failed. They were left scrambling in the raging storm. Meanwhile, air traffic control was shocked to discover that half of Flight 421 had suddenly vanished from radar, and both aircraft had lost contact.
If you like the video, then like and subscribe the channel.
And even all the instruments failed. They were left scrambling in the raging storm. Meanwhile, air traffic control was shocked to discover that half of Flight 421 had suddenly vanished from radar, and both aircraft had lost contact.